Legends of blood-sucking fiends, returning from the grave to prey on the living, can be found in cultures dating as far back as ancient Egypt. Vampires, described in folklore as immortal creatures who live on the blood of innocents, can be warded off with a cross and can only be killed by exposure to the sun or by driving a stake through the heart. In the last 100 years, Bram Stoker's classic novel Dracula has spawned not only a horde of fictional imitations, but a counterculture of disciples who drink each other's blood. Today, there are people who celebrate a vampire culture of their own creation. This man says his family initiated him into a secret order of vampires. He has been drinking blood since the age of 12. A Minnesota couple believe the Romanian Dracula of history, Vlad the Impaler, speaks to them every day. A California woman has created a vampiric existence for herself by drinking blood, sleeping in a coffin, and driving a hearse. Does this obsession with vampires merely reflect man's desire for immortality? Or is it an experiment with the darker impulses of human nature that most prefer to leave uninvestigated and unexplained? The Fang Club in Beverly Hills, California, is more than a bar with an unusual dress code. It's a gathering place for people with vampire fetishes. The clientele like to dress up, put on fangs, and role play. Of the hundreds who attend regularly, there are about 20 individuals, including Nicholas Strathlock, who believe they are real vampires.
The rest are a mortal crowd. It's a wonderful world, though, where all your inhibitions can be laid low. It's just to come and enjoy and fully express what we are without the fear of any repercussion. People go there expecting to see vampires, and that's exactly what we are and what we give them.
A respected member of this community, Nicholas works as an administrator and mentor in what he calls vampiric spirituality, a belief system that includes the idea that vampires are actually undead gods. According to Strathlock's vampiric religion, these gods, who are made up only of psychic energy, seek out mortal hosts who are predisposed for possession by vampires.
One of our ancient ones will enter into the body and therefore create a permanent change or state of being, which does create the vampire, which is what occurred with me when I died at 5.
In 1958, on a family outing in Wales, Nicholas Strathlock claims that he was pronounced dead for more than 20 minutes after a swimming accident.
When I revived from that, I had abilities. I had the ability to know what people were thinking, to be empathic to their emotional states, and to be able to finish sentences for folks. And it was quite disturbing because as a child, I figured everybody could do that.
After the accident, Nicholas spent 7 years studying the occult and honing his psychic and healing powers. He soon came to believe that his body had been inhabited by a vampire god. At the age of 12, he was initiated into his family's clan, the Order of the Dragon.
It was primarily just a blood ritual for that. We spoke of feeding, we spoke of taking the life force from others. It's been something that's been in my family for generations.
Standing in a stone circle in the Welsh countryside, Nicholas pledged his allegiance to the order.
That was an actual vampiric initiation. They put their blood into the chalice all together, and I drank of that, which solidified our union. And since that day, I've trained and worked with vampires.
Nicholas eventually made his home in Los Angeles, where he founded a vampiric temple.
We believe that the churches in all major religions were begun by vampires of one form or another, and they were done to keep humans from revolting against our wills, to keep humans docile, to always respond to the will of God. And since we were the gods of mankind, we needed to protect our interests in human affairs.
What you are about to see is an actual vampiric ritual, a practice which may be disturbing to some viewers. Nicholas and other self-described vampires drink the blood of consenting human donors. He lives with a man he refers to as his blood donor, whose blood he drinks every other week.
It is a sharing of love, of togetherness. It's a feeling of communion between yourself and another living being. It's the blood of life. Sharing of your spirit, sharing of one's soul. For me, it's just a very beautiful communion. And it provides me the nourishment that I need. It also provides me the closeness to my partner.
Aside from blood drinking and a gothic wardrobe, these modern vampires share little in common with the pop culture vampires of movies and fiction. The rays of the sun will not kill them, and they can see their own reflections in the mirror. Many own and even wear crosses, and they have no aversion to garlic.
As with Guy, he works in an Italian restaurant. He usually has a lot of garlic, so I can taste that quite often. And no, we're not allergic to it. It's just not all that pleasant. We are not immortal. Physically, we are not. You shoot me, I'm gonna die. You stick a stake in my heart, that'll kill anybody.
The vampire subculture has attracted thousands of followers in the US. At the Beverly Hills Fan Club alone, hundreds of blood drinkers, groupies, and counterculture enthusiasts celebrate their common interest every week. What draws people to a culture which many people find frightening and even repulsive? A ritual where the predatory act of sucking another human's blood is not only condoned, but celebrated. A religion where seemingly amoral and immortal gods roam the earth.
I think we take all of the elements of Dracula from the past, the elements of sexuality, the elements of immortality, and we add them now to the extreme anxieties of urban life, anxieties about the nature of blood, anxieties about the economy. And we have come up with a new subculture that's every bit as strong and as powerful as, say, the beat subculture of the 50s or the hippie subculture of the 60s and early 70s.
The vampire has provided the image around which modern anxieties, as well as fantasies, are expressed.
There is a very powerful unconscious desire that we all project, I think, on the vampires, and that is immortality and power. What can beat that?
The most exciting thing about being a vampire is realizing that I'm not bound. I'm not bound by the morals of society or by the set precincts that people have to put out there for us. It's being free to do what I want to do when I want to do it.
The desire for liberation from societal control defines almost any subculture. What is unique about the Fan Club is a casual acceptance of an extraordinary practice, blood drinking.
Blood has a very strong set of symbols and emotions attached to it. And I think what the vampire community is doing is drawing upon those emotions and those symbols. Within this community, there are some people with blood fetishes, and then there are a large number of people who would really like to be vampires, to have the power and the magnetism and all of the things that it means to be a vampire, and who adapt themselves to a vampiric lifestyle as much as possible.
Nicholas Strathlock says that vampirism, including blood drinking, is more than a lifestyle choice. To him, it is a religion, a belief system, and a community. Despite the predatory nature of blood drinking, and maybe because of it, he finds vampirism intoxicating.
It allows me the ability to experience everything that's forbidden, the darker side of my own being, my own dark desires, to be able to fulfill the fantasies of some others, to be able to, as I say, to be a dream to some people and a nightmare to others.
Next, the fictional count who opened a Pandora's box of vampiric fears and fantasies, Dracula. The fictional vampire Count Dracula has occupied a place of honor among the pantheon of Halloween ghosts and goblins. His eyes are red, his teeth are pointed, his pallor is ghostly, and his breath rank. He can materialize out of mists or moonbeams, yet he can be repelled by a simple cross. Most importantly, to maintain his immortal life, he must drink the blood of innocent victims. What is it about Dracula, half human, half monster, that is so compelling? Is he the reflection of something in ourselves that our own mirrors do not reflect? Bram Stoker's 1897 classic, Dracula, has been translated into dozens of languages and has never been out of print in the century since its publication. With good reason, the story draws its mesmerizing power from the deeply rooted mystery of the vampire myth. Dracula unfolds in a series of diary entries. It begins with an account by an English lawyer, Jonathan Harker, who travels from London to Transylvania to visit a mysterious client, Count Dracula. Harker's mission is to finalize Dracula's purchase of a mansion in London.
Transylvania means the land beyond the forest. Now, what that actually signifies, though, is the way you and I would say the land beyond the clouds, the unknown country, from whose bourne no traveler returns, as Shakespeare put it. It's the place nobody's ever been. It's the unknown place, the strange place, where anything is possible, including phantoms, vampires, werewolves, and all that.
Jonathan Harker arrives at Castle Dracula and meets his host, the Count. From the very first, he realizes that there is something strange about Dracula. Harker notes in his diary,
"He made no motion of stepping to meet me, but stood like a statue as though his gesture of welcome had fixed him into stone. The instant, however, that I stepped over the threshold, he moved impulsively forward and, holding out his hand, grasped mine with a strength which made me wince, an effect which was not lessened by the fact that it seemed as cold as ice, more like the hand of a dead than living man."
Author Bram Stoker researched his story well. This description of Harker's first meeting with Dracula comes from ancient Transylvanian folklore. According to legend, vampires could not approach or attack a victim unless the victim willingly invites the evil in. Once inside, however, evil is overpowering, the kind of evil of which the Victorian lawyer is woefully unaware.
Jonathan Harker really fell prey to his own ignorance. Had Jonathan Harker been familiar with the folklore of Europe, of Transylvania, he would probably fared differently. He would probably been able to ward off the vampire.
As Harker grows ever conscious of his predicament, he realizes that he has become a prisoner in Count Dracula's castle. He fears he may die there, when suddenly he is approached by Dracula's minions.
There was a deliberate voluptuousness which was both thrilling and repulsive, and as she arched her neck, she actually licked her lips like an animal, till I could see in the moonlight the moisture shining on the scarlet lips and on the red tongue as it lapped the white, sharp teeth. Lower and lower went her head. I closed my eyes in a languorous ecstasy and waited.
Dracula arrives to break up this encounter, driving the women off in an exchange that, from a Victorian perspective, must have been overwhelming in its homoerotic overtones. Dracula growls at the women that this man is mine.
I think the most powerful thing about Dracula is his sexuality. Bram Stoker hit upon a sexual theme that had to do with the giving and receiving of power during the sex act, and built a fabulous story around that with elements of horror and pain and suffering.
These themes are fully explored in a later encounter between Dracula, who is now in London, and Harker's fiancée, Mina. Appearing at Mina's bedside, Dracula clasps his lips around Mina's throat, pierces her skin, and drinks her blood. Then, he forces her into an act that bonds her to the vampire for eternity. In her words,
"With his long, sharp nails, he opened a vein in his breast. When the blood began to spurt out, he took my hands in one of his, holding them tight, and with the other seized my neck and pressed my mouth to the wound, so that I must either suffocate or swallow some of the, oh my God, what have I done?"
Dracula has begun the process of turning Mina into a vampire by forcing her to ingest some of his supernatural blood. Metaphorically, Dracula and Mina have done something that was not spoken of in Victorian times. Yet sex was not the only reason Dracula became popular. The myth of the vampire touches a deeper chord. What is it about the themes of evil, power, sexuality, and death that have made Dracula a classic piece of literature?
The legend is immortal. Why? Because as long as there are humans around, they will yearn for what? For physical immortality and remaining young.
Dracula, the Count, the vampire, certainly stands for what Carl Jung said, the dark side of our mind. Half of our mind is in the dark, he said. We don't know what's inside there. Well, we are now starting to grope into it and to dissect it and to desacralize it. The taboos are gone, and we are more and more daring into asking, what are we? Why are we like that?
In contrast to the afterlife offered by most religions, becoming a vampire promises physical immortality in the here and now.
This notion, again, that vampires want to live forever is reflected in the modern world's obsession with not blowing themselves up and not catching salmonella and not ingesting raw food. It's this desire to stay alive forever, which is a yuppie version of a vampire.
Bram Stoker's Dracula has a clear moral: succumb to the allure of the evil and abandon your soul.
But in the end, if you invite it in, it's great for a little while, but then all of the evil consequences begin to work their way out. That's simply the way that evil manifests itself in our personal lives to a great extent.
Next, the enthralling myth of the vampire is embodied by a 15th century Romanian ruler, a man whose real life was the model for the fictional Dracula. Transylvania, a province of modern-day Romania intersected by the Carpathian Mountains, is as mysterious and romantic today as it was in the 1890s, when Bram Stoker was doing research for his novel, Dracula.
So everything you see in the novel, read in the novel, and see in the movies, garlic, the cross, all that stuff, that's authentic folklore from Transylvania. He didn't make up any of that. That's the irony. People think that story is the product of a wild imagination of some Irishman or other, Stoker. No, he didn't make up anything.
Transylvania has long been regarded as the crossroads of every known superstition in the world. It was also home to one of the most brutal leaders of all time, a 15th century ruler named Vlad Dracula, who fought to keep the Turkish Empire from expanding into Christian Europe. He was the model for Stoker's famous vampire. Vlad Tepes Dracula was born in Transylvania in 1431. In Romanian, Dracula means son of the dragon, or son of the devil. When Vlad's father became ruler of Wallachia, a province just south of Transylvania and north of the Turkish Empire, Vlad first went to live at the palace, and then, as a form of peace treaty, he and his brother were sent to live with the Sultan in Turkey.
He did not know Turkish. He was a Romanian. And he was a Christian, and they were Islam. They were Muslim. So it was a trauma time for him as a young child. A very, very difficult time.
Vlad became an avid student of Turkish cruelty. He was particularly interested in the technique of impalement, in which a stake would be driven through a human body and then anchored into the ground. This method of torture, a kind of popsicle technique, is similar to crucifixion. The victim dies slowly by bleeding to death.
The stake is driven in a way that would avoid the vital organs. The idea was to have the victim live for some time up on the stake.
Vlad Dracula and his younger brother Radu were released by the Sultan after Romanian noblemen allegedly murdered their father and older brother. Vlad assumed the throne in 1456. He quickly put the lessons he learned in Turkey to use, earning the infamous title Vlad the Impaler.
He said nothing in the first couple of years to those who helped in the murder of his father and of his brother. But then one Easter year, possibly in 1459, he invited all this nobility at an Easter party. He surrounded the place with soldiers.
And after they've been full of food and drink, he impales the children and the women and the older people too who can't help him. And then he takes the rest of them, and there's a forced march from his capital at Târgoviște to his castle Dracula, Poienar, and there he has them rebuild the castle that was on the hill there.
Satisfied with his revenge on the landowners, Vlad turned his attention toward the Turks. To stop them from raiding and looting Wallachia, Vlad and his soldiers rode into Turkish territory and then rode back out again, killing and burning everything in sight.
Scorched earth is a brilliant policy for several reasons. If you destroy all the crops and all the shelters, houses, etc., you know, the old story, an army travels on its stomach. In those days, they didn't have logistics the way we do today. They had to live off the land. If there's no food around, you make it virtually impossible, not completely, but virtually, or very difficult for an army to invade.
Dracula realized that he had delayed the Sultan, not stopped him. In preparation for the Sultan's eventual retaliation, Dracula began impaling his Turkish prisoners in unprecedented numbers.
He created a forest of impaled. It took him months and with the help of a lot of people. Dracula liked to dine amid his impaled victims. The stench must have been unbearable. Rotting corpses, some of them up there for weeks. And this is what greeted the Sultan. And he said, "What can you do against a man who does such terrible things?" So he took his forces and went home.
Vlad was, in a sense, victorious. So he told his nobility, "Let's follow the Sultan. He's running. Let's finish him."
At that moment, the nobility sided with Vlad's brother Radu. Dracula lost his crown and was imprisoned.
He couldn't give up his bad habits even in jail. But of course, he couldn't get any humans to impale there. So he caught mice, and he'd torture and impale them. And then he bribed his jailers to buy him birds from the marketplace. And then he'd pluck the feathers off the birds, and they'd get disorientated and run around his cell. And then when they were, all tired out, he'd take them and stick them up on little stakes. So he had what anybody would call an impalement fetishism. I mean, he was into it.
Years later, Vlad briefly regained the throne of Wallachia, only to meet his end during a battle with the Turks. What is the relationship between the Dracula of Romanian history and the supernatural vampire of Stoker's novel? Was the historical Dracula as much of a devil as Stoker's Count?
There are two schools in Romanian historiography describing Vlad, Dracula. One school says that no matter of reasons, he should not have employed impalement to such a large scale. The other school says everything he did was politically motivated. There is reason behind his apparent savageness, cruelty, state reasons.
Psychopath or amoral pragmatist, Vlad Dracula's methods were horrifying.
He killed his own people. He killed peasants, ordinary Romanian peasants, living on that side of the Danube, for this purpose, for the scorched earth purpose, so that when the Turks arrived, they wouldn't find food. And that's what happened.
Like his fictional counterpart, Vlad Dracula had an obsession not only with power, but with blood. Some accounts suggest he even liked to drink it.
He would take bowls, fill it with blood from the victims, and then he'd take a piece of bread and dip it in the blood and slurp it down, high-protein diet.
Unlike the immortal Count, Vlad Dracula died a natural death at the hands of the Turks. But mystery followed Vlad the Impaler past the grave. For hundreds of years, it was believed that his remains were housed in a monastery north of Bucharest. But in 1931, when his tomb was excavated, it was empty. So powerful is the fascination with the Dracula story that some people today claim to communicate with the spirit of the 15th century warrior. Next, a Minnesota couple who claim they have been living with Vlad the Impaler for years. The spirit of the historical Dracula and the vampire myth to which it's been forever linked by the novel still lives on for history buffs and fans of the occult. But for this couple, Vlad is alive and well and living with them just outside of Minneapolis. Kathy and Dale McKinley say they have channeled the spirit of Vlad Dracula. Kathy grew up fascinated by the occult, monster movies, and especially Bela Lugosi's portrayal of Count Dracula.
In junior high school, my teacher used to call me Morticia, and I had this little reputation that I was, this little quote-unquote Dracula person.
Kathy also believed she had psychic abilities.
I knew when things were going to occur. I knew what was going to happen next. Sometimes I would have visions. A lot of times, I would know when somebody was going to die because I would feel this nausea suddenly out of the clear blue sky.
Kathy felt an instant psychic connection to the historical figure of Vlad the Impaler upon seeing a portrait of him in a newspaper.
I wanted to know Vlad. I mean, everybody I've ever wanted to know, I've met usually in my life. So I just continued sitting and meditating. I did not channel Vlad, but I had some kind of connection where I knew that this was somebody that I would meet, possibly someday. Whether it be on this side or on the other side, there was a connection.
Kathy began taking classes to study channeling, a process in which the spirit of someone who has died supposedly speaks through a living person. In 1986, Kathy met Dale McKinley at a festival for the cult vampire television show Dark Shadows. Dale was a fan of the show, not a vampire buff. At the time, he had never heard of Vlad the Impaler. Dale was captivated by Kathy's enthusiasm and her interest in the occult. After a couple of years, they were married and moved to eastern Minnesota, where Kathy continued to share her interest in mysticism with Dale by teaching him how to use a Ouija board.
We were trying to contact relatives that had passed on her side and seeing just what we could contact, if we could make any type of contact. I've always had an interest in the paranormal, but this gave me a chance to explore it even deeper.
They claim that when they tried to contact the object of Kathy's longtime obsession, the channeling worked.
And all of a sudden I started hearing the messages coming into my mind before they were coming on the board.
At first, Kathy refused to believe that she might be channeling the legendary Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, but she continued to meditate and call out to him. One day when Dale was at work, she became overwhelmed by what happened to her.
My head just hurt like it was going to explode from the inside. It just hurt, just like somebody was crushing the inside of my head. And I said, "Make it stop." And I fell to my knees, grabbed my head, said, "Stop." And immediately it stopped.
By dinner time, Kathy says she began acting strangely and believed that Vlad was taking over her body.
Vlad is saying he wanted to like throw the pork chop bone to the floor. And when I did that, of course, then Dale goes, "Yeah, okay, what's up?" And so then I said, "Well, I think I'm channeling Vlad."
Kathy claims that further attempts at channeling the ancient spirit were mildly successful, but she wanted more.
I wanted physical contact with Vlad. And, you know, I have to say, yeah, you know, I was a little fanatic about Vlad to begin with, and I did fall in love with him from way back, so there was an attraction for me.
Kathy asked Dale to try to channel Vlad and told him how to do it.
It took a long time for the spirit to actually come into Dale. And then all of a sudden, I noticed there was like a little bit of a change. Dale was sort of moving his head back and forth like this, and then he started spreading his hands out. I just said, "Vlad?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Are you Vlad?" And he said, "Yes." After a few moments, I said, "Can you open your eyes?" And then he slowly like opened his eyes and he sort of smiled in a way. Our conversation was very short, you know, and sweet, I guess. And after that, I let him go.
Dale says the experience was like a half-conscious dream. Kathy and Dale continued to practice channeling Vlad several times a week.
Over time, we developed the channeling to a much more intense relationship, where now it's a continuous type of basis.
Although in life, Vlad Dracula was a sadistic killer, Dale and Kathy say that being dead will tend to temper the cruelty a person might have had. For this reason, they say they have never been afraid of their visiting spirit. In his interview with the Unexplained, Dale took on the persona of Vlad the Impaler.
I am quite comfortable in this body and in this situation and this relationship as well. The relationship in its own sense is fulfilling for me. I did not have a fulfilling relationship in my time.
Kathy and Dale credit the Romanian ruler's spirit with helping them to redesign their home with a medieval flair.
Yes, it's like great hole in the wall. It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's like empty.
They feel that Vlad is a positive and loving force in their lives and hope never to lose him. Is there an explanation for Kathy and Dale's bizarre relationship with the Wallachian ruler and mass impaler, Vlad Dracula.
You may look at the channel and go, boy, this is a bunch of bunk. Another person may take it in and find deep purpose and meaning. That Vlad, that power may resonate in someone and connect to them.
It's a fetish, perhaps in not significantly degree different from people who have fetishes for shoes or ankles or God knows what else, rubber, for example. I mean, people's sexual response is so varied, it's even difficult to classify.
Kathy and Dale have sought out others to verify what they believe, including a psychic astrologer.
What I had seen was a spirit behind Dale, just behind him to the right. And it was the spirit of what I took to be a warrior, very tall and very, very fierce. I kept seeing him while I was speaking with Dale and wondering, in fact, if they knew that someone that extreme was with them. I don't mean that the spirit was going to hurt anyone, but that it was a particularly savage type of spirit. Not the sort that most people want to channel, wise men, gurus, film stars.
For a split second, I saw the most tortured and torturous eyes and face over his face.
Nancy Mostad also bears witness to Vlad's spirit. The first time she saw Vlad was when Dale and Kathy were on a television talk show.
It shook me up, and I had to shut it off. When I did eventually sit down across the table and Dale allowed the spirit of Vlad to come forth, what he was saying was very kind and gentle and interesting, but what I was feeling from that entity was something else. I felt very strange. And I also had a strange energy drain, and I couldn't share that with Kathy and Dale because he was so dear to them.
After 8 years, Kathy and Dale are still happy in their relationship with Vlad, despite their frustration at not being able to authenticate their common experience.
I only know what I saw and what I felt, and it wasn't a positive thing for me. It was very frightening.
I believe that, the gifts of what appear to be unexplained are really gifts of each individual searching within themselves for their truth, their answer.
No one can prove that what you're identifying as a spirit isn't a projection of your own mind. We don't really know that. But inasmuch as spirits exist and you can detect them, I believe it is a spirit.
We're very sure of what we believe in. Why can't they be sure of what they're experiencing and what they believe in as their truth?
Paranormal experience or psychodrama? Kathy and Dale aren't the only ones satisfied with their arrangement. Vlad, speaking through Dale, claims to have found a sense of purpose in their lives as well.
What I give to them, in a sense, is the hope that there is more than here. I also give them affection as well, too. I give that to Dale and to Kathy both.
Dale and Kathy believe that Vlad's spirit also provides them with the knowledge of an afterlife, a sense of immortality. Next, a woman who has been drinking the blood of her friends since childhood. Today's self-proclaimed vampires are not immortal. They can be seen in mirrors and are not afraid of crucifixes. Many hold regular jobs and enjoy long-term relationships. What distinguishes them is they drink human blood straight from the source. This woman, who goes by the name Katrina Coffin, is one such blood drinker. She also drives a hearse, sleeps in a coffin, and lives in a horror museum of her own making. She has been drinking the blood of her friends since she was a child.
If one of my friends would cut themselves accidentally, I'd take the blood from their cut, and then the kids got fascinated with us, and they'd if they cut themselves, they'd come over and stick their finger or whatever was cut in my mouth, and it's like, look at this. This is really fun.
By the time Katrina was a teenager, she didn't wait for accidents to happen in order to drink her friend's blood. She started to take a more active role.
It got to the point where instead of someone cutting themselves accidentally, they would let me make a cut, or sometimes they'd even cut themselves with a razor blade or an X-Acto knife, and I would take the blood from them. And nowadays, I have what I refer to as donors. Now, these are donors, not victims. These are willing, consenting adults. I would never do this with an animal or a child.
For Katrina, vampirism is a mutually enjoyable, sensual experience. But in the absence of one of her donors, she occasionally quenches her thirst for blood by drinking her own.
It has to be warm, flowing, living blood. Therefore, it has to come directly from the wound. I don't draw it out with a syringe and then squirt it into a glass, because once it hits the air, it cools off and coagulates, and then I don't like it anymore.
Although Katrina lives in sunny Southern California, she does not frequent the beaches. She avoids sunshine whenever possible by spending the entire day sleeping in her coffin.
I don't like the sunlight. I just happen to like skeletons and caskets and coffins. And I like the taste of blood. I like the night. I am not a Satanist. I am not a devil worshiper. I do not go out and kill people for blood. I'm just trying to give people an explanation for what vampirism is all about.
What are modern vampires? Are they a representation of unexplored darkness in our own natures, or something else?
We simply have no evidence that a true vampire exists. There are no resuscitated corpses running around attacking people and drinking their blood. What we have today are a group of people who have glommed onto the image of the vampire. And interestingly enough, it's the literary vampire, not the folklore vampire, that they have attached themselves to. So it's this creation of 19th century fiction that has become the image that animates the vampire community.
There are several major taboos in modern civilization. One principal one is, it's not the only one principal one is we don't drink human blood anymore. It's antisocial. Why? Because if you drink human blood, somebody's blood is getting drunk. That means you're taking blood from somebody. Whether they're a willing donor or an unwilling donor, you're taking the life's blood from somebody. And that's a parasite.
In addition to drinking another person's blood, the predatory vampire is in search of power.
The interests about a vampire, that temptation to become a vampire is related to power. It's not financial power, it's not the power of science, it's the power of magic.
Associations with power, youth, and magic make vampires as appealing as they are frightening.
It's about ourselves. You think we're interested in undead? No, what interests a living person is that we can talk about ourselves and what our wants, needs, maybe in ways we wouldn't want to talk about personally, as humans. But we can project these things onto a vampire and write about them and talk about them. Like what? Like the desire to live forever and remain young and healthy.
They like to live forever, that we know, and they like to stay alive by sucking blood from beautiful English women, which is not a bad thing to do. Short of that, I don't know why you'd want to be a vampire.
Losing your soul in exchange for immortality is an irrevocable pact with the devil that not everyone would be willing to make.
If we want to play a game with our eternity, let's make a pact with the devil.
Now, what the devil is going to do with you is not very clear. We can only refer to the warnings of the religion that once you are in the hands of the devil, then you are lost, of course, forever.
The taboos that restrained Victorian England have little or no meaning to modern Americans. Today, people freely act out their vampire fantasies and fetishes in ways unimagined in Bram Stoker's time. The power, magnetism, and freedom that vampires symbolize is obtained at a very high price.
Let's look at it this way. Dracula is an alternative we dare not take, but it is an alternative to the afterlife offered by the established religion.
Humanity has been enchanted with these creatures of the night for centuries. For most, the vampire captivates us because he leads directly to our most frightening inner selves, to the parts of us that still remain unexplained.